Hello everybody. Welcome to another rapid speedrun game with the white pieces against Valerka rated 1655. We don't get a Rui Lopez as he does some type of gambit attacking our pawn. If we take this pawn, he'll kick our knight. So I'm going to take the other pawn. I'm sure both are playable in a way, but I always like taking the e-pawn. I feel like it is the strongest pawn to take in lots of situations. It can no longer advance with e4. And removing that possibility permanently from the board is nice. So it was his gambit, but now he's thinking, okay, so he recaptures the pawn. Fine. I would like to develop. I think it makes some sense to develop the knight and attack the pawn, but I would also like to castle as fast as possible, so I would also like to develop the bishop. This happens to come with a threat, so I'm going to go with this one because it allows me to castle. I'm going to prioritize that over the pawn. Now he brings out his queen, not a minor piece. This hits my knight, this hits my pawn. But the f7 point is hanging and it's aligned with my bishop for a future d4. So you have to notice all of the things, all of the factors, how all the dots are connected. In this case, um, let's see. You throw in the check and he just maintains contact with the bishop. Do you have anything there? Well, now a lot of your stuff is hanging. I don't really see a good move. A very active move looks like d4. Just not messing around on f7. d4 protects the knight and hits the queen. So he has no time for en passant. So it almost forces him to prove his idea and take on g2. However, our development lead would be so great that I am going to go for that. He's hitting our rook in that scenario. There we can consider, do we want to throw in a check? Maybe, maybe not. Or do we just want to move our rook for one turn? Probably that. It's not easy to defend. You know, this threat's easily countered. You can take here, throw in a check maybe, and he goes up and then move your rook. It's possible. Maybe I should just throw that in, disrupt the harmony of his development. No matter where his king goes, it blocks some bishop, or he could go here, but that doesn't keep the pressure on my bishop, so it feels a lot safer. And future, knight forks, not so good. So he moves his king. I would love to sack my rook if I could and just continue with my initiative. This check, I can't fork his king and queen, unfortunately. If I develop my queen, it doesn't do enough specific stuff. So I guess let's just move our rook. He's not even up material because we both took a pawn. You know, you may say, oh, me moving my rook, I can't castle, but his king can't castle. I hope he wastes time taking the h2 pawn, right? I want him to take more pawns and not develop. And my lead in development is huge because my bishops are open, my queen's open. My knight will come with an attack on the pawn. I'm in his position. When I retreat the bishop to a defended square, I'll be automatically threatening knight forks. So it's already overwhelming on white's position. The activity is too much, and that's why queens that hunt these pawns, they waste a lot of time, and it's an important concept to know that you can play against this by speeding up in time and development and allowing him to take the pawn instead of just defending the pawn. Although in that situation we didn't even have a move that defended the knight and the pawn, so you were kind of forced to play energetically whether you like it or not. When you don't have the resource you're looking for defensively, when it just doesn't work, you know you have to, be energetic and dynamic. So he develops and it pressures the knight, which makes some sense. Okay. But once he takes that knight, my queen will be open with check. So that would be very bad for him and good for us. I think knight development makes some sense. I don't see a reason not to make that very logical move, bringing in my close quarters piece into the game. I can't bring my long range piece with great effect in the game, so I'm going to go with my close quarters, move it in slowly. He develops his knight, and now he's double attacking my knight. Fine. I'm not going to take him, of course, and help him. I'm just considering my developing moves. You could also move this bishop out of the way. I'm not even live, but thanks for the follow. Interesting. If I take this, I suppose he could take my knight intermezzo. But I was thinking, if you take this, you free up the knight, but he could take the knight technically. And then your bishop's hanging. You could take the knight, you could take the bishop, and then you get another piece. So maybe he can't do that. So if we take the knight, and he takes the bishop, and we throw in this check, we could pick up this bishop. His pieces are discombobulated. It's an idea, but I just want to develop. Queen here gets hit. What about... No, I don't want to move my queen actually because of this alignment. So let's just bring the bishop out. This square is solid but passive. This square is loose. But maybe I can kick the queen in. Okay. So let's go here. Slightly more active. See where he goes. All of our minor pieces are out, looking alive and well. Okay, so he tries to free up some space for his bishop. That's the idea. The drawback, it weakens these two light squares, immediately giving our knight a beautiful checkmate out of nowhere. That's crazy. Can you imagine that? That's so wild. Move 10. I was not expecting that. I was not even considering the idea, the possibility of this checkmate. My brain didn't even see how that would be checkmate until he did it. Like sometimes I notice the patterns or potential patterns. I try to work towards them, but that's so unusual of a smothered mate. Because the bishop's here, that's so odd. But since I asked myself what the drawbacks of the moves were, the pawn, these two squares no longer defended by the pawn, and then you realize, oh, new candidate move, and it happens to be checkmate, move 10. That's pretty wild. I like that though. So this was a 1655, a 1600 rated strong player who got checkmated in 10 moves, right? And all we did was develop, try to play logical moves in the center, bring out our pieces, maximize our activity, and let his queen go on an adventure. So let's see if the engine likes it. Okay, so I don't know what this is. Is there a name for this? Oh, elephant gambit? Is that what this is? I don't know. But we take this thing. What's the best move though? Okay, the top two moves are take either pawn. They're both plus 0.8. So I guess this isn't good for black. The engine doesn't like it anyway. So plus 0.8, whichever pawn you take. I don't like the idea, without knowing theory, I don't like the idea of letting him push e4 and kicking the knight. So I take the e pawn. Let's turn the engine off. Fine, we're already better. He gets his pawn back, and I'm focusing on development, speedy development, get my king safe. I bring a piece out with a threat, immediate threat. Look at my activity already. He goes here, and now it says we're plus 1.8 and higher from here on out. So we responded correctly. Yeah, we didn't make any mistakes, which is nice. So what's the best move? Okay, so you can, wow, the only two moves. Interesting. So the only two moves that are tied for the top spot at plus 1.7 is throwing in the check and the move I played, d4. Both equally strong, both make a lot of sense. However, I like d4. I think, human speaking, you add the stability, the energy from the new bishop you just opened up. I think it's a lot harder to mess up going down lines where you add new pieces as opposed to taking on the pawn. I mean, you could play d4 after that. That's why it doesn't really matter, but you get my point. If you have two equally good lines, choose the one that you bring more pieces in, because if something goes wrong, you'll be better equipped to deal with it. Very simple idea, but it's super strong. So anyway, the only two moves were those. So if we tried like, well, I guess our knight's hanging, so you don't really have a choice. You have to do one of those because there's nowhere to retreat your knight back to. So you would have to, the only other thing would be like f4, but they're saying now black is minus 1.2 because he takes this, your king is now newly weakened. And there's no reason to do that when you can do it with a different pawn that doesn't weaken your king and opens the bishop, right? It makes no sense. Okay, so we play the best move. He takes the pawn, which he has to at this point. Now there's two moves for the advantage for us. Grab the pawn and protect the rook. Otherwise, black's a lot better. So we find the much stronger of the two, considerably stronger, which is grabbing the pawn. Otherwise, if you move the rook, he could potentially push the pawn. And if you give the check, you don't win it. So this is stronger, grabbing the pawn in a forcing way. He probably should maintain contact with the bishop so it's a little loose in case the knight moves or is hit or taken. But he thinks this is safer, where we have plus 1.3 advantage. But I think in a human way, it's a lot easier to play with white. I think it's even more than plus 1.3. It'll end up being in a real game. Now we save the rook because we have to. He develops a piece. And yeah, here they want me to jettison. This is my one inaccuracy, they say. I mentioned the idea where you can take the knight and free up this square for your knight. So they want me to go down that line. Takes, and then develop. But they want me to remove my bishop from that square, because knight developing to f6 also stops my queen coming into h5. So it would remove a key defender that would allow my bishop and my queen to enter the fray, which is nice. It's nice because it has the hidden idea that if you take this, now you can play bishop check, and he can't take because the knight fork. So you get, after you get rid of your bishop, you get the free bishop check and then the free queen h5. So now I could see why the engine likes this the best. But okay, I mentioned it, but I played the second best move for +2, developing a piece towards the center. Now it's +3, as he's not being harmonious in his development. He's blocking his pieces when he could have just moved to a different square. Right? He was probably worried about doubling his pawns, but that would get rid of my strong knight, waste my turn, and help his bishop. So I wouldn't take him anyway. So what's the best move here? I wanted to just develop my bishop. So you could retreat the bishop, which I was considering the whole time because it frees up the knight. But the second you do that, he could take the knight or avoid the problems with the fork. So I considered, you know what, let me spend my turn developing. So equally good at the top move as bishop b3 is bishop f4. There's also, they mention, they're not as good, but knight e2. and bishop b3. I determined bishop b3 wasn't as good. It was too little passive. And knight e2, I didn't look at, but I suppose it has some remaneuvering potential. But I keep saying but. But that's because there's buts and caveats on the caveats and nuances and stuff. I would rather bring in a new piece out of all of this. So I do like bishop f4 for plus 3.3 and then mate in 1. So you can see how there's a lot of options in a game like this. And, like in this position, you can take this pawn, you can take this pawn, you can try to decline it, I guess. I don't know. You can develop a knight. And once you make your decision, he makes his, you can see you have another decision. You can bring out the bishop, you can bring out the knight, you can push the pawn 1, you can push the pawn 2, you can push the bishop 1, you can fianchetto, right? And it's like, which one do you choose? And hopefully I'm explaining which one I'm choosing and why. On every turn, there's just decisions to be made, and just try to make logical ones while keeping track of the tactics on the board. So, good luck in your chess. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.